Welcome to Fulfilling This Belly Sting. A show dedicated to aligning a journey to a better mental health using the understandings of the ancient Norse. Join us each weekday morning at 7 a.m. Alaska time. Someone's little girl, daughter, sister, girlfriend, fiance, wife, cousin, mother, auntie, grandmother, great grandmother, elder, disappears, shattering, a family, a community, the world. There is something we can all do. Remember them. Look at that.
God Morgen, and a happy Mani's Day to you. Today we celebrate the Norse god Mani. For those of you not 100% familiar with Norse legend and lore, Mani, of course, represented by the moon that we could see each and every evening, as his sister Sol would have kind of gone down in the west and he would have risen in the east. Before we get started today, I want to give a huge shout out, as always, to those of you who have liked, followed, and subscribed. Thank you so much. If you haven't had the opportunity yet, now is your time. Go ahead and mash that button. Click and just join in the distribution of hopefully a message that can help you find and obtain and maintain your mental space. It's so important in these modern day times that we really have a handle on controlling our mental space. Things are crazy in this modern day world, so it's nice to have at least some way of getting a hold of a good mental space that we can kind of retreat into when things are really very stressful. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to all the platforms that distribute this message, including, and most importantly, New Reality TV. newrealitytv.com is, of course, a streaming channel dedicated to providing us with opportunities and different perspectives that can help us to grow and evolve and hopefully restore our mental space. For those of you who may need an ear to bend, maybe just a different opinion, by all means, visit my website, norsewhispers.com. There you can find out all about me, my message, my shows, and of course, if you want that ear to bend, someone to talk to, by all means, check out the coaching section where we can get dialogue started and hopefully make some headspace for you so that you can obtain or maintain that mental space. This morning we'll have Facebook Live chat as well as TikTok. So for those of you who may have questions or comments, by all means, put them in the chat. Let's talk. Let's bring those up. All right. So with no further ado, let's talk a little bit about Mani. Mani, of course, to the Norse meant the moon. He was kind of in charge of dipping the temperatures so that he would offset the heat of the day brought on by his sister Sol. Okay, so he was the balancing, right? What he allowed us to do is to recognize this balance in our lives, whether that been the balance between our spiritual self and our physical self, whether that been the balance between our emotional self and our physical self, whether that been whatever, we needed balance, because balance is where we, of course, maintain our mental space, or obtain it, right? This is where we can actually begin to recognize all the influences coming into our lives and trying to change us. There are influential energies all around us. Some inadvertent, some as a natural state, and some with kind of this ulterior motive or different reasoning for doing it. The ones that are the most troublesome for most is those that have an ulterior motive, those that are trying to change us for the sake of changing, just for the sake of having some level of authority over us, by converting us, by changing us, by making us fit into their mold, whatever the case may be. This is now, there are some of this influential energy, as comes from our parents when we were young, that they're trying to set us on the right path. They're trying to kind of establish that better way of living, so that we aren't so stressed, we aren't so kind of beat up each and every weekend when we're trying to process all the emotions and the experiences from that week. They're trying to set us up for that and trying to help us out, to help us build these structures within our mind. So these initial influential energies, of which we naturally offer a level of authority to, of parents, grandparents, other authoritative figures, certainly as we are young. And then as time goes on, that pool of whom we're willing to give authority to begins to span out, right? And we begin to allow peers to manipulate us. Sometimes this manipulation is allowed, sometimes it isn't. All depends on your level of authority that you're giving out, right? So, as an example, if we were to make friends and those friends have a trait or an action, maybe a behavior in common, and we don't fully subscribe to that behavior or that extrinsic display, then we find ourselves at odds. So then we have a decision to make, right? We have a decision as to whether we're going to live incongruently or not authentically or not, right? So if we decide that we're not going to subscribe to the inauthentic, the incongruent, and we pull ourselves back, we may fracture that friendship. We may disassociate ourselves with that group of people. Now, in some cases, we, as humans, can get a little confused. And what I mean by that is the confusion is caused by nature, humans are social creatures. We tend to gravitate towards inclusion in different groups, right? Because strength in numbers. So we're always trying to be a part of something, which is all well and good when our alignment is there, when our authentic alignment allows us to be a part of this group and not live inauthentically, not separate just to meet the bar, the whatever it is that helps us to stay in that group. When we step away from our authenticity to do that, we find ourselves kind of building up stress within our mind, even if we don't recognize it. And this is the most dangerous of all the stresses that we'll have. It's the stress that we can face, that we can see, upcoming deadlines, or we have a very large bill coming due here in a few weeks, or some type of stress that we can really see. Really, it's almost tangible. Those stresses are, believe it or not, easier to deal with than the ones we can't see. The ones we can't see is when we're living inauthentically. We have a delta between the biochemistry that's released from the heart to that which is actually processed. When we're living inauthentically, for those of you who may remember the well of the self, if we're actually able to get biochemistry from the bottom of the rocks, right? The rocks at the bottom of the well, that biochemistry kind of provides a relief of sorts, in that it doesn't add any stress per se to the energy that's going to be processed further down the road. It simply processes the energy through our values. It manipulates the view and releases the biochemistry based on that view. If we drop down and we're living inauthentically, remember, we don't come all the way through the well. We stop at the surface and we kind of bail to the left there. So we don't have as much biochemistry. And what's going to happen with that delta is the biochemistry comes out here, or it starts being created here. And what's going to happen is potentially we can use imagination to fill the delta. Well, imagination, as we've mentioned before, can be either good or bad in our current perspectives. In other words, we can imagine things for the better, and that's really that's great. That's the absorption and the proper use of the energy of hope. However, we can also imagine things that are not so beneficial for us or not so healthy. So we can imagine, and this is what we do quite frequently when things are scary or fearful. We're going to multiply exponentially the fear using this energy of imagination. And it's in every part of our lives. Even if we're a very non-imaginative person by nature, the way we act, the way we think, the way we display, the way we behave, even if we're not very imaginative, imagination and the energy therein is part of your makeup. It's part of how you do what you do, right? So sometimes we imagine an out-of-the-box solution. If there's a challenge that we're currently facing and we're looking at it and we kind of go, no, what if I step over here? What if I... And we start, and we can actually get a solution because we're thinking, I think the social term for it is outside the box, right? So we're thinking outside the box to get a solution. Well, outside the box is imagination. It is the use of imaginary energy to think between our knowledge stacks, right? Because we know the knowledge stacks are going to work, but we're having to make a leap over here to kind of include all of this. So imagination is a big part of what we are. And the problem here is that it can also be kind of work against us. This is the idea behind Halloween scare houses, or whatever they're called in your area, where you go and you typically it's donative. You pay a donation or something, and you go through a home or maybe an office space, and they've got these scare stations set up that you're going to walk through, and they're going to scare you, and it's all in good fun, but nonetheless, as you're going through there, your imagination is actually doing more to enhance or more to enlighten, to make this thing scarier. Your imagination is doing more of the work than technically your physical sensory input. So you're seeing, a hallway, but yet you're imagining someone's going to pop out from any place, right? And that's this increase. So imagination has the potential of both being very good, i.e., very hopeful, very positive, very forward thinking, as in out of the box thinking or solutions, or it can be not so beneficial in that it multiplies exponentially fear, or kind of not enhances, but multiplies exponentially sometimes this fear factor, right? So instead of just being cautious, we're terrified. So that's really what imagination does when it comes to our mind. Now, imagination also goes into our social interactions, right? So we think people like us or don't like us, whatever the case, right? We're imagining that. That's imaginative. In lieu of, whether we see or hear or all those things, which is one level of evidence that social engagement may not be going the way we hoped, but we're going to imagine it worse than it really is. Okay, and we do that. We do that naturally. It's part of our thought process, and so we really have to get control of imagination, and we have to kind of say, all right, let's use it for what it's good at, and let's not allow it to run rampant, right? Let's not let it do its wild thing. Now, understand that imagination is also part of the creative process. So it's kind of cool. It really is a benefit to our existence to have this imagination. It's it allows us to be very creative. But again, there's a time and a place, and there's a beneficial factor to it and a non-beneficial. When we come back, we'll talk about how do we get ourselves and our imagination in check so that we can now process those things that are occurring actually in our lives and really come to a better mental space regarding imagination. So we'll be right back, and we'll talk about the steps forward.
In the air. The time is now.
We're all waking up.
We're waking up.
We're all waking up.
It's all shifting.
New vibrations.
It's you.
It's you.
It's me.
It's all of us.
Together.
A new time.
A new day.
A new energy.
A new energy.
New reality.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
newrealitytv.com.
Thank you for taking that very quick, hopefully short break with us. When we left, we were talking about imagination and how it benefits us and how it can kind of work against us. So let's talk now about steps that we can use to determine where do we go from here. Step one. Step one is we have to figure out what our values are. What are our intrinsic values? Not what has been given to us, not what is our societal values. What is our values? What do we hold in the higher state? Do we honor, encourage? And I think of the virtues of my ancestors who believed in this 9 noble virtues. And those 9 noble virtues included how to live well, how to make sure our tapestry was sewed with the right signs and the right energies. So things like honor and courage and hospitality and generosity and even industrialness and self-reliance, these are all part of our virtues. But honorable, as an example, living honorably. When we step if we decide that's one of our values and we say, yep, I am honorable. When we step outside of that for a moment and we live a little inauthentic, i.e., we tell a little white lie to get out of work, as an example, and instead of being homesick, you want to go fishing or some other adventure or excitement. Instead of school, we're meeting up with our social group to do a particular action. We are living inauthentically. We are creating a delta between the energy processed and our authentic self. We are creating intrinsic stress. Now, what exactly is intrinsic stress? Intrinsic stress is really internal way of minimizing our ability to process emotional energy. That's really what stress is. In other words, if you think about your ability to process, whether it be physical sensory input, whether it be imagination, all of this energy processing through your brain, say it processes through a tube, a big, tube that we can handle quite a bit. At the top of this tube, if you will, is some headspace. That headspace is used for our cognitive thinking. We can think our way through this. This is a very important section of this bandwidth processing. But when we decide to live inauthentically and we step outside that boundaries and we're not listening to the values in here, we're going to create silt along the bottom. And that silt is going to become like concrete. And we're going to slowly fill our tube, right? So we're processing less and less emotions as they come up in our existence, right? So as we experience them, our brain kind of can't process all the energy. What happens in most cases is that we see what I call spillover, and that's where we have more energy than we have bandwidth to process it with. And that energy then spills into other parts of the brain, which doesn't really know how to handle this energy. And so we create physiological symptoms, anxiety attacks, panic attacks, trembling. Depending how much spills over, you can get into a phobia type of reaction. All of these are caused when this energy that we've created now spills over our bandwidth. We can't process any more thing. Now, most often than not, what happens is we have filled the tube to get to spillover, and so we've lost this space, this cognitive space, so we can't think our way through this. When we're able to be cognizant, we can chunk it down, right? We can actually break down this overwhelming thing and kind of take it piece at a time. But when we're bum rushed, as it were, and we don't have this headspace, now we can't do that. We start having anxiety attacks, we start having panic attacks, sweaty palms. This is physiological symptoms, physiological responses to an overdose, if you will, of energy that can't be managed. We just don't have the bandwidth to do this. So we get this overflow. Blackouts would also be another part, or another symptoms of stress overload. So understanding who you are is step one. And step one can be done fairly easily when we're honorable, honest with ourselves, and we take some time to meditate and think about what are our values. Now, in many cases, as I'm working with men and women, I find it very beneficial for them to write these down. Just take a minute. Once you've done some meditation, you kind of thought about, okay, what are my values? If I were to, write out what is me, what represents me, what do I want to represent me, and what currently do I represent. Who am I? Write these values down. Now, why we're going to write them down? Because we're going to make notes, but it also allows us to refer back to them, so we can kind of look at, all right, what's changing, what am I altering to be a part of this group, this social order? What am I altering of my being because of a condition or a special circumstance right now that's really driving me to this other place, right? These kinds of things are the things you want to write down. When we write them down, again, we can refer back to them, and we can monitor them over time, okay? And we can see how we're growing and changing and evolving. Super exciting, super important. Meditation is a great way to do that. When we focus, we can clear out all of our sensory input. We can actually figure out what it is we value. Now, the other way that we can do that is what I call the directed meditation. And this happens every night before you close your eyes for sleep. As you're laying down, you're very comfortable, you're relaxed, you're ready to go to sleep. If we kind of force our mind to think about our questions, what am I? Why do I feel this way? What are my values? What do I want? And we kind of force ourselves to think that way as we're going to sleep. Many of the answers can come to us during the dream state. Dream state, of course, is that time when our physical body is actually in communication with the spiritual realm, and we're gaining this knowledge, this infinite knowledge from the spiritual realm about us. Because believe it or not, our ancestors know more about us sometimes than we do. As long as we're honest with ourselves, writing down the values at night, as we're closing our eyes to go to sleep, we're going to think about, what are my values, what do I want, where am I going, those types of questions. And then as we go into a dream state, journaling is a great way to kind of review our dreams and to look at some of the interpretations therein, and actually figure out what are our values. Once we have our values, we know what authentic looks like. We have a baseline now of what authentic is to us. Then we can evaluate how we're utilizing that authenticity with our social order, with our social groups. By identifying which groups we live authentically in and which ones we don't, this kind of affords us the opportunity to then start making decisions moving forward. As we make those decisions and we're living authentically, we're going to find a stress reduction. We're going to find that we get all that space back from the silt. Remember that? Okay, now we've wiped that clean. By living honorably, by knowing who we are, by knowing our values, we're wiping that out. Why? Because now the energy is going all the way through the well to the rocks at the bottom. We're building the biochemistry, we're releasing the right biochemistry. Our brain recognizes now these different emotions, and now we're processing our experiences in a more realistic, more personalized way. So 2 really big steps: identifying who we are, and then identifying us in relationship to all those things around us. Really big, 2 really big, fairly easy steps. And it takes time. Many times when we sit down and we're meditating and we say, I want to know what my values are, and we're really thinking about what our values are, they may not all come to us the first time. we may have to have multiple times of sitting down and understanding, right? And working with these. So, 2 big steps hopefully we can use today, celebrating Mani, the Norse god of the moon, but we really understand him to be mental control of our lives and our existence. So, using that to then benefit us in the future. All right, my friends, today we celebrate Mani's Day. If you get a chance, take a look at those 2 exercises we talked about today. Remember, you've got all day, so use them accordingly. And figure out who you are. Figure out where you are authentic, and then we can move forward. All right? All right. I wish you the absolute very best Mani's Day. Best day of the week, new beginnings. We can wipe the slate clean from the past and move forward with excitement and hope, and just really looking forward to the new opportunities that are on their way. All right? So we will see you again tomorrow when we will celebrate the Norse god Tyr. For those of you who would like runic readings, by all means visit the website we spoke of before. I can do private readings. I also do on Mondays now. We're going to do a week-long reading of what we can expect this week. So looking forward to that. Check it out. By all means, if you haven't liked, followed, and subscribed, please do so. You can do so on any of the platforms here. You can also like, follow, and subscribe to the shows on New Reality TV. I encourage you to do so. And I also wish you the very best Mani's Day. We will see you again tomorrow when we will celebrate the courage of Tyr. Have a wonderful day, my friends. We will see you again tomorrow.
Been watching for Felina's Belly Snake, a special production of Whispers of the Norse. Brought to you by the Alaska Ulf Hefnar in South Central Alaska. Guidance and wisdom, courtesy of an ancient Celtic Norse shaman. Thank you so much for joining us today.